Right, I want to show you how to do Tampunto, digitize it in Hatch. This is an example of what Tampunto looks like. See the raised effect with the flowers because there's stuffing behind it, batting. Rather like quilting, but more intense, I would say. All right, so here's the design we did, or one of the designs I did in with red work and Filtier, which were the last two lessons. But now we want to put batting behind it, and and the batting has to be. You'll notice there's three colors here. The first color is the Filtier, and that has to be the first color because um, and it has to be a separate color because it uses a different needle. Once it's sewn, it gets sewn with the wing needle, and once it's sewn, you need to change out to your regular needle. So regardless of what, even if it's the same color you're using after this, you need to have a color stop. So it has to be a different color. Now, the filtier would get sewn first because there's no batting behind the filtier. You have to be safe to see through it. It's like lace. So there can't be batting behind it. So it has to be the very first color. Your red work is the second color, and then your satin edge is the third color. And it has to be last because there's areas in the red work that come into that satin, especially there at the bottom. So it's going to get sewn last. Now, to put the after to put the tampunto behind it, we need to put stuffing behind it. But we can't have the stuffing behind the filtier. So we're going to need a line separating those two sections. After we've sewn the filtier, then we apply the batting. So all we need is a straight stitch that will sew that batting down that we can then cut it away from behind the filtier. So we're going to digitize an open line and just go around here at the edge of the filtier. And I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that properly, but it's the way I've always pronounced it, so you're stuck with it. Anyway, we're going to around here at the very edge, the inside edge, not the outside edge. The outside will be empty. We're just marking where the batting is going to end. So we're putting a sewing line here that will, once we put the batting and a layer of stabilizer behind it, we can sew all of these layers together and then cut away the batting that is behind the lace, the filtier. So we're just sewing, and it doesn't take long to do this. Just digitize a straight stitch line all the way around the edge here. And I will show you how this gets sewn off so that if there's confusion as to what I'm talking about, you'll see it in the sewing. You have to just kind of keep in mind the order of things that you want. And so now we're back where we began. So we have this line, and that needs to be sewn second. So we're going to, in the resequence, we're going to have to move it up to the second color stop. And then once that is sewn down, we cut away the batting from behind it. Then we can sew the red work, the red color. And then we need to sew we need a fill for the background. So if this were in the auto digitize section, you could probably mark that into fill and just click on that and do fills that way. But this is not auto digitized. This was manually done, so I'm going to have to go in and mark it. But it's not that difficult. You'll see it only takes less than 5 minutes to do it. So I'm going to digitize a closed shape, and because this is going to be fill, and start here at the bottom, and I'm going to go all the way around the outside of the flower. In this case, it's or whatever the design area is. In this case, it's a daffodil. So I'm just going to go around the outside edge of all of this. And notice I'm right at the edge, the red work edge. If this were quilting, you would usually leave a space between it and the quilted section. But because I want the filtier to push down the background to make the flower pop up higher, and that's the whole point of Tampunto, I want the stitches to be right at the edge. And so here at the edge of the opening of the daffodil, it's kind of a ragged edge here. It doesn't have to be absolutely exact, but you want to get it as close as you can. And I'm just going to follow again all the way around the whole edge of the flower design, and then the inside edge of the filtier, the same section that I had just done um, in a straight stitch. Now, most of these designs, the flowers are all grouped together in the center anyway, so that makes putting a design around the outside edge pretty easy to do. And if you look at the examples of the filtier, and I've included pictures of them in this, the flowers that have large petals show up more three-dimensional than flowers that don't. So for example, the stem on this daffodil will not pop up as high as those petals. Those petals will pop up really nice because they're nice and wide. I have a daisy design in red work, and because daisy petals are narrow and thin, and the leaves for the daisy are narrow and thin, and the stems for the daisy are narrow and thin, it does not show up well with Tampunto. It's all right, but it's not great. Where the rose, the pansy, and the daffodil show up very well because again they have more area, more the stuffed area is bigger and therefore can push up higher. Like this leaf that I'm going around right now is kind of narrow. It won't pop as high as the petals or the leaves, the other excuse me, not the leaves, the petals of the daffodil. And then when I get down here to the bottom, I'm going just to turn and go along the outside, well, the inside edge of the filtier, so that marking the whole area that I want, where I want the fill stitches. And you can see this just does not take long. This took, what, 5 minutes? By the time I'm done, maybe 8 minutes. But it really has a nice effect. And you think, well, okay, this is fine for quilting. What has this got to do with vestment making? I'll show you what it has to do with this. I made a very nice I.H.S using Tampunto and the filtier. Almost anything you can do, you can get used in investment making. So there's your fill background. Now there's a small here at the area here at the bottom below this other daffodil that needs to be filled in. So I'm going to get close enough so I can see what I'm doing and fill in this small area down here. And those are the only two areas. Everything else is either leaves or flowers. So you see it didn't really take much. All right. So now once these are the areas, and right now these are tatami, but I need to change this to a motif fill. And now I could use the tatami and open it up very wide and do away with the underlayment. And I did that, and that was the background I did use on the pansy one. If you look at that, but what you need is something for a background here. What you need is something that is not large, not very small. Not very small because it's going to take forever to sew, and not very large because you you want to minimize the puffiness, but having some there is fine. So I've picked a couple of I'm trying here a couple of different motifs to see what they look like. This is a nice size. It's almost like a basket weave, and that would work. But I'm going to look at a couple others just to see. This also would work, but I don't really like it. I did like this one. I do like. I think that's the one I ultimately go with. I also like the basket weave one, which I will probably use on another flower. I'm still trying a couple others. Most of these, again, I don't. I find to be a little bit too small or too busy. You don't want any of the ones that have the satin stitch in them. You just want something to flatten the background, but you don't want something like this that is too flat. I mean, there's too many stitches in the background. So I'm going to go and here I'm moving the color up to where it should go. It should sew third before the red work. You can sew it after the red work, but there's a chance that your stitches might go on top of your red work, so you want to sew your red work after it and then your satin stitches. And here I'm just sending it over. I'm saving it and sending it to my machine to sew. And the next video I'll show you how it gets sewn off. And so then I'll see you in the next video.